No one had ever seen Judge Judy like this. Her hands, known for firm control and fearless authority, were shaking slightly as she held a torn, yellowed letter. The courtroom, usually filled with murmurs, tension, whispers, was silent enough that you could almost hear her heartbeat. That single piece of paper, soft around the edges, as if someone had opened and folded it 1,000 times, brought the strongest judge in America to the edge of tears. It said she has faced liars, manipulators, criminals, entitled millionaires, disrespectful defendants. But what she saw written on that paper broke through the armor she kept for 27 years, and the world will understand why today. Minutes before this moment, no one expected anything extraordinary. A homeless man named Michael stood in that room like thousands before him. Worn-out army jacket, scuffed boots, hair tired from wind and struggle. Just another case, some thought. A petty theft argument. Maybe a noise complaint. People looked at him the way society often looks at those who live on sidewalks. Curiosity coated with judgment. No one wondered who he used to be, who he lost, what memories kept him awake under cold bridges. No one even imagined that this fragile-looking man once stood strong for a country that now walked past him without a glance. But inside his hand was a letter, the last connection to a life he once cherished. Judge Judy had seen everything, or so she believed. Next case, she had called earlier, without knowing this one would remain with her forever. When Michael stepped forward, clutching that envelope as if it held something more valuable than gold, she raised an eyebrow. Why bring a letter to court? Why not speak? Why hide behind silent paper? Even Judy herself didn't know she was seconds away from the most emotional moment in her courtroom history. Viewers, you included, might think you know where this story goes. You don't. Not yet. Because that letter didn't just contain words. It contained a life, a memory, a goodbye no parent ever wants to hear. And trust me, when you learn what's inside, you will feel what everyone in that courtroom felt. Pride, pain, and a deep shame for ever judging him too quickly. If you're still listening right now, it already means something inside you believes that every person has a story. And maybe, just maybe, you're the kind of person who doesn't stroll away from truth. In fact, when you hear what happened next, you might even feel your eyes water the same way hers did. People talk about viral videos, shocking court moments, explosive drama. But the real reason this story reached millions wasn't drama at all. It was humanity, pure, raw humanity. Something America often forgets to honor. The very people who once stood with a flag behind them, a rifle in their hands, and a promise to protect us even if it cost everything. So keep watching. Because, in just a moment, you'll learn why Judge Judy, the woman known for iron discipline, suddenly softened like a mother seeing her child after war. You will learn what Michael had to sacrifice, what he survived, and why that old letter was the only thing keeping his heart beating through the cold nights. And when the truth unfolds, I won't have to ask you to like this story. Your heart will do it by itself. Because this isn't just a case. This is a reminder that heroes don't always wear clean clothes or walk with pride. Sometimes they stand trembling in court, hoping someone will finally hear their story. Stay with me. You must hear what happened next. Michael didn't walk into that courtroom like most defendants do. He didn't have a lawyer polished in a suit or a family member holding his hand. He entered slowly, quietly, almost as if he wasn't sure he belonged there. His footsteps were soft, hesitant, but heavy with a lifetime of memories no one in that room could see. His faded military jacket hung loosely on his shoulders, patches barely visible, almost like his identity had faded as well. His beard was overgrown, his hair unkempt, yet his eyes, there was something in them, a story, a silence that screamed louder than words. The audience whispered among themselves, some curious, some judgmental, some already convinced they knew exactly what kind of man he was. In America, it's easy to forget that the homeless man you ignore today might once have been the soldier who stood between you and danger. But no one remembered that. Not yet. Judge Judy glanced at him with her usual sharpness. The type of look that could slice through excuses like paper. To her, he was just another name on the docket, another man who had made mistakes, another problem to solve before lunch. There was no reason for her to think this case would be different. She didn't know that the man standing in front of her hadn't always stood alone. That jacket once represented pride, service, honor, a promise he made at 19 to protect the country he loved, even if it cost everything. And it did, bit by bit, piece by piece, year by year. But she couldn't see that story. Not yet. Michael clutched the letter tightly, almost protectively, like it was the last warm thing he owned. And maybe it was. The corner was torn, the ink slightly faded, some words smudged from what looked like old fingerprints or maybe dried tears. He kept glancing at it, as if the paper itself was giving him strength to stand. A security blanket for a broken soldier. Some people in the gallery rolled their eyes, assuming it was some dramatic attempt for sympathy. They didn't know that he wasn't here to be pitied. He was here because life had given him one last chance to be heard. Judge Judy cleared her throat. Her tone was firm, commanding, the way America knows her best. "State your name," she said. He lifted his head slowly, voice soft but steady. "Michael Thomas, United States Army veteran." A few murmurs rippled in the room, some surprised, some skeptical. It's strange how quickly people change their perception when the word veteran enters the room. A moment ago, he was just homeless. Now, he was someone who might have bled for the flag hanging above the judge's bench. And before I move forward, I want to say something from the heart. If you're the kind of person who respects those who served, those who fought battles we never saw, then this story will mean even more to you. And if you're still here listening, you're already showing more compassion than most people showed Michael that day. Keep watching, because the truth he's about to reveal will make you see him not as a defendant, but as a hero who never stopped fighting, even when the world gave up on him. The court clerk handed him a microphone, expecting him to defend himself, to argue, to plead. But Michael didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice or try to prove anyone wrong. He just stood there quietly, holding that letter with both hands, as if it contained his entire soul. Judge Judy sighed slightly. She had seen men like him before, nervous, defeated, trying to pull the sympathy card. She had no time for games. "Why are you here?" she asked, leaning forward, looking right into his eyes. A simple question. A heavy silence. He swallowed hard. His lips parted, but instead of words, he extended the letter, gently, silently, as if asking her to read the story he no longer had strength to speak. And just for a moment, a fraction of a second, Judge Judy paused, not visibly, not dramatically, but something in her eyes softened, almost unnoticeably. Maybe it was the way his hands trembled. Maybe it was the way he stood, unarmed, unshielded, vulnerable. Or maybe deep inside, she sensed this wasn't a typical case. Something was different. Something was hidden behind that envelope. Something she couldn't judge until she knew what was written inside. If you'd been in that courtroom, you might have felt the same instinct, the feeling that this wasn't just another defendant. This was someone holding onto the last piece of his past. And you, watching this right now, deserve to know what was in that letter. But patience matters, because the deeper we go, the more powerful this story becomes. And trust me, when the truth finally unfolds, it will stay with you long after the video ends. So don't go anywhere. The reason behind that letter, and the crime Michael was accused of, is coming up next. And once you hear it, you won't forget him. The courtroom energy changed the moment the charge was announced. The store owner stepped forward, voice sharp and confident, claiming Michael had stolen canned food and bread from his small grocery shop late in the evening. A simple case on paper. To most people, theft is theft. But what no one knew, not yet, was why he took it. Judge Judy adjusted her glasses, her tone firm as always, prepared to cut through excuses like she had done for decades. "You're accused of shoplifting," she stated, eyes locked on him. "What do you have to say for yourself?" It was an open door for him to defend himself, argue, shout, cry, anything. But Michael didn't do any of that. He didn't justify, didn't plead, didn't claim innocence. He simply lowered his gaze, holding that letter closer to his chest like it was the only thing keeping him from collapsing. Under the weight of the world, the store owner spoke confidently, almost irritated. He walked in, grabbed food, and didn't pay. I work hard. I don't owe free meals to anyone, veteran or not. There it was, the spark of conflict, the tension. Some audience members nodded in agreement, others frowned. Judge Judy listened carefully. She had seen entitlement before, and she had seen hardship. But this case felt like it held something deeper, something unspoken. She leaned back, eyes still sharp. "So, you stole because you were hungry?" she asked plainly. Most people expected a yes, but Michael shook his head slowly, and that surprised everyone. Hunger wasn't the reason. It wasn't even the beginning of the story. He took a breath, voice roughened by fear or grief. "Maybe both. It wasn't for me," he murmured. The store owner scoffed, not convinced. Judge Judy raised one eyebrow. That look Americans know too well. The one that says go on. "I'm listening. But this better be good." Michael's fingers brushed the edges of the letter again, as if searching for courage written inside it. I took it for someone who couldn't ask for it himself." A few heads turned in confusion. Someone whispered, wondering if he meant another homeless friend. But the truth was still hidden behind silence. Judge Judy pressed further. "Then who was it for?" This was the moment tension tightened like a thread. Michael's voice nearly cracked. "For a dog," he finally said. "A stray. He sleeps beside me under the bridge." He was starving. And just like that, the room's judgment shifted. Just a little. Some people softened. Others still didn't understand. But one thing became clear. This wasn't a case of greed. It was survival, compassion. A man who once fought enemies with guns was now fighting cold nights with nothing but a dog's loyalty beside him. Judge Judy sighed slightly, not out of impatience, but because she realized this man wasn't hiding selfishness. He was hiding pain. Real pain. And that trembling letter he carried wasn't evidence. It was a story waiting to break open like a floodgate. Before the judge could respond, Michael gently extended the envelope toward her. Again, his hands shook. Not with fear of punishment, but with fear of reliving the past printed inside that paper. The courtroom watched closely. Everyone leaned forward without meaning to. This wasn't ordinary anymore. This was human, raw. A man with nothing left was offering the courtroom the last piece of his heart. And if you're still here with me, listening carefully, then you already feel something moving in your chest. You're not watching a thief. You're watching a forgotten warrior, asking the world to understand before it judges. Judge Judy hesitated, just for a moment, as if deciding whether to take the letter now or make him speak more first. But Michael wasn't finished. Not yet. The truth inside him was like a dam on the verge of breaking. "I didn't want to steal," he said, voice low but steady. "I served this country. I stood for it. And then I lost everything. My home, my health, my family. That dog's the only reason I wake up every morning." A wave of quiet washed through the courtroom again. The kind of silence people give to stories that deserve respect. The store owner shifted uncomfortably, suddenly unsure if pressing charges was still the right thing. Even those who judged Michael when he walked in were seeing a different man now. And somewhere inside you, even if you grew up thousands of miles from him, something tells you this story is far from over. Because you haven't heard what's inside that letter. The real reason he's standing there instead of lying broken beneath a freeway overpass. That letter holds love, loss, and a truth that could shake anyone who reads it, even Judge Judy. So stay with me. What happens next will be the moment that changed the courtroom into a place no one expected. A place where justice turned into humanity. If your heart is already involved, just imagine what it will feel like when the letter finally opens. We move to the next chapter now, where his past finally speaks. Michael stood there, not as someone fighting a case, but as someone fighting memories. You could see it in his breathing, the way his shoulders rose and fell as if he'd run 1,000 emotional miles before stepping into that courtroom. Judge Judy leaned forward, her expression still firm, but no longer sharp like before. Something in her eyes hinted that she sensed the weight of the story buried beneath his silence. She didn't take the letter just yet. She wanted to hear it. From his mouth, not from paper. "Tell me," she said, voice steady. "What happened to you?" A simple question, but to Michael, it was like asking a man to reopen wounds stitched shut with pain. The room remained quiet. Everyone watched. Some held their breath without realizing it. Michael wet his lips, glanced down at his boots, old, split on the toe, like they'd walked through more struggle than most people could imagine. "I wasn't always like this," he began softly, the kind of soft that makes people lean closer. "I had a home, a family, a daughter who used to run to me every time I came back from training. She'd jump into my arms and say, 'My hero is home.'" His voice cracked on the word hero. He wasn't speaking to defend himself anymore. He was speaking to remember, because memories were all he had left. Judge Judy's posture changed. Her back straightened, but her gaze softened just a fraction, enough to show she was no longer seeing a criminal, but a father. "Where is she now?" she asked. And that question, that one, almost shattered him. Michael blinked hard, holding back something heavy and painful. You could feel it, not as a viewer watching a case, but as a human watching a man swallow heartbreak. "She passed away," he whispered, 3 years after I returned from deployment. "Cancer." She was only 9. A gasp rippled through the room, quiet but heavy. Even the store owner looked down, guilt sneaking into his conscience. Michael took a shaky breath. Her mother. She couldn't handle losing her. "We tried to be strong for each other, but grief doesn't ask if you're ready. It takes whatever it wants." He paused. "She left. I don't blame her. Sometimes pain breaks people differently." He rubbed his eyes, not to cry, but as if they burned with memories. "After that, I couldn't keep a job. The nightmares came back. The doctors called it PTSD. But to me, it felt like I was stuck back there, in the sand, in the noise, in the blood." His hands trembled slightly. "I sold everything I had. Then the bank took the rest. One morning, I woke up under a bridge instead of a bedroom. And that is where I found him." His lips curled into the smallest, fragile smile. "A dog. Skin and bones, shivering, alone, just like me." People listened differently now. No more judgment. No more whispers, just quiet understanding. Even if someone clicked this video expecting drama, what they got instead was a lesson, one that America often forgets. Veterans don't always come home whole. Some come home invisible. Michael continued, voice low but growing steadier, as if speaking the truth was releasing him from silence. "I named him Chance, because he gave me one." His eyes glistened. "When I fed him the first piece of bread I ever shared, he laid his head on my knee, like he knew I needed someone to stay." He chuckled softly, a sound filled with both love and ache. People see a homeless man with a dog and think, irresponsible. But they don't see the nights he kept me warm, the mornings he gave me a reason to wake up, the days he stopped me from ending it all. Judge Judy didn't interrupt. She simply let him speak, something most people hadn't done for him in years. And you, listening right now, probably feel the shift too. You came for a story, but you stayed for a soul. And if that doesn't move you, wait, because the most powerful part, the part that broke Judge Judy's voice, still sits inside that old envelope. Michael finally looked up. "This letter," he said, raising it slightly. "It's from my daughter. Her last words to me. I read it every night." His voice thinned. "Because it's the only thing that reminds me I was once someone worth loving." The room froze. It wasn't just a letter anymore. It was love preserved in paper, pain sealed in ink, a daughter's goodbye dot. And if your heart is already pulled into this story, Then hold on, because the moment Judge Judy opens that letter will change everything. What's written inside is something even she wasn't ready to face. Some people say that a courtroom is a place for justice, but on that day, it felt like a battlefield of silence and truths waiting to explode. The entire room was frozen, Judge Judy leaning forward, the audience holding their breath, and the bailiff standing like a statue. This was the moment everyone waited for. The letter that could either destroy everything or reveal the kind of sacrifice most people never even hear about. Judge Judy gently unfolded the pages. Her eyes scanned the first lines, and for a second, her face completely changed, from stern and sharp to shocked, almost broken. She looked up at the homeless veteran, her voice struggling to remain steady. "Where did you get this?" The man swallowed, hands trembling, but his voice was calm for someone who had suffered so much. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "that letter isn't just a piece of paper. It's proof of a promise the world forgot. But I never did. And right here, before we dive deeper, if this story is touching your heart, don't hold back, hit that like button right now. Not just for the video, but for every veteran who gave everything and got nothing in return. Trust me, what's coming next will make your heart tremble." Judge Judy continued reading. Her voice cracked. These weren't legal words. They were confessions. Pain. Love. Regret. And a secret bigger than anyone expected. The letter was from his commanding officer, written years ago, during their final deployment. And inside, it said, "Something no one was ready for. If something happens to me before we return, give this letter to my daughter. She deserves to know the truth." But that wasn't even the shocking part, because the next line completely flipped the room upside down. "Tell her her real father is the man who saved my life every night on that battlefield. Private Adam Hayes." The room gasped. Judge Judy froze. That woman sitting across the room, the one pushing charges against him for trespassing and stealing. She wasn't just a stranger. She was the daughter mentioned in the letter. And just like that, everything made sense. Why he was found sleeping near the house. Why he refused to fight her in court. Why he carried that old letter like a piece of his soul. He wasn't homeless by choice. He sacrificed everything to fulfill a promise. He spent years searching for her, surviving streets, hunger, cold nights, just to deliver the truth. The woman's eyes filled with tears, anger melting into something softer, something heartbreaking. She whispered, barely audible, "You knew my father." He nodded. "He saved my life, but I failed to save his. I didn't come here for money. I came to give you what I should have given you years ago." He held out the letter, hands shaking, as if passing the last piece of a broken past. The court wasn't breathing. Neither was the audience. Even Judge Judy wiped her eyes, something she rarely ever does. You could almost feel decades of pain float into the open air. And if you're still here listening, that means you feel it. So before we continue to the most shocking part, take a second, subscribe now, because stories like this deserve to live, not disappear. You won't want to miss how this ends, and what happens next will leave you speechless. Judge Judy looked at him, voice soft but firm. "Why didn't you deliver the letter earlier?" He smiled, sad, tired, broken. "I tried, every year. But life wasn't kind. And when I finally found her house, I slept outside, waiting for courage. That's when they arrested me. The courtroom wasn't the same anymore. Every accusation was fading. Every judgment was melting. Because truth changes everything. But here's the wild part. There's still one more secret in that letter the court hasn't heard yet. A secret even bigger than fatherhood. One that could change the woman's entire life forever. Judge Judy took a deep breath before turning to the final folded page. You could feel the tension thick, electric, like the whole courtroom was standing on the edge of something unbelievable. The veteran stood with his head bowed, as if he already knew the storm that was coming. The daughter sat frozen, tears streaking down her face, gripping the arm of her chair like it was the only thing keeping her from collapsing. And then, Judge Judy read the last part. Her voice trembled. If this letter reaches my daughter, tell her one more thing. I left something behind. Something she deserves more than anyone. The audience leaned forward. You could hear the creak of the courtroom benches, someone sniffing, someone whispering a prayer under their breath. Judge Judy continued, my military pension, life insurance payout, and all my saved benefits, they belong to her. But she can only claim them through the man who saved my life. Private Adam Hayes. Silence. Then disbelief. Then a gasp so loud it echoed through the room. Millions of dollars. Enough to change her life forever. And the key to unlock it was the very man she brought to court. This wasn't just a homeless veteran. He was the guardian of her future. The last living link to her father's sacrifice. Judge Judy slowly lowered the letter, eyes shining with something rarely seen, respect, awe, and heartbreak. The woman stood, shaking, her voice barely held together. All these years, you carried this for me. He nodded softly. It was his wish. I owed him more than a life. I owed him this moment. The woman took one step closer, then another. Her anger was gone, replaced by something deeper, something real. She looked at him as if seeing him for the first time, not as a vagrant, not as a trespasser, but as a hero who lived with ghosts, so she could live with truth. She broke down, rushing into his arms. The entire courtroom erupted. Gasps, tears, even the bailiff blinked hard like he wasn't allowed to cry on duty. Judge Judy herself whispered, this case is dismissed. With honor. She wasn't just closing a file, she was closing decades of forgotten pain. And listen, if this moment touched you even a little, hit that like button, not for me, but for every soldier whose story never reached the world. And go ahead. Subscribe, because the ending of this story will stay with you forever. But just when it seemed like everything was over, the veteran hesitated. His body shook, not from fear, but from a weight he still carried. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal tag, scratched and faded, a dog tag. His own. He placed it into her hands. Your father gave me his last breath. I'm giving you everything I have left of mine. The room fell silent again. Judge Judy stood up, something she almost never does during a session. She walked around the bench, approached the two of them, and gently placed her hand on the veteran's shoulder. You are not homeless today. Her voice was firm, proud. You are home. The audience rose. Not one person remained seated. Applause thundered across the courtroom, echoing like a salute. Tears streamed, hearts shook, lives changed in front of everyone. The woman held his hand, refusing to let go. You're coming home with me, she whispered. Not an invitation, a promise. And as they walked toward the exit together, a broken past slowly stitched itself into something breathtaking. Family. The courtroom emptied slowly, but the energy didn't fade. Michael wasn't just leaving with a dismissed case. He was leaving with something far greater, dignity restored, a promise fulfilled, and the beginning of a new life. The woman, now reunited with the man who had silently guarded her father's final wishes, walked beside him, holding his arm. There were no cameras, no scripted moments, just raw humanity. And in that silence, everyone understood something profound. Justice isn't always about the law. Sometimes, it's about the heart outside the courtroom. The veteran took a deep breath of fresh air for the first time in years. The weight that had pressed on him, hunger, fear, grief, and loneliness, began to lift. He looked at the woman, his daughter in every sense now, and smiled, though tears still glistened in his eyes. She smiled back, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and awe. She understood what he had endured for her, what sacrifices he had made silently, and what loyalty truly meant. Judge Judy, usually a pillar of stern authority, stood watching from her bench, quietly wiping her eyes. Even she couldn't deny the transformation. A man once judged by his appearance alone had become a hero again in the eyes of the world. Her courtroom wasn't just a place of verdicts that day. It was a stage for redemption, courage, and love. As the story spread outside those wooden walls, it captured hearts across the nation. News outlets, Social media posts and comments flooded in, thousands expressing disbelief, admiration, and inspiration. People marveled at the unwavering loyalty of a man who had once risked his life on the battlefield and now risked everything to fulfill a promise to a little girl who wasn't yet in his life when the battle began. His humility, his silent suffering, and his dedication reminded everyone watching of the sacrifices countless veterans make. Sacrifices that often go unnoticed. And this is where the final lesson hits hardest. We live in a world where judgments are easy and assumptions are made faster than truths are told. But Michael's story and that letter prove that patience, empathy, and courage can change everything. It reminds us that heroes aren't always celebrated publicly. Sometimes they walk silently beside us, carrying invisible burdens and unseen scars. And sometimes it takes just a single act of understanding to give them the life they deserve. Before we close, I want you to pause for a moment and reflect. If this story touched your heart, let it resonate beyond just watching. Like the video, not because it's popular, but because you honor the sacrifices of veterans, the power of promises kept, and the human spirit's resilience. Subscribe to the channel to ensure that stories like Michael's aren't forgotten. Because every hero deserves to be remembered, and every truth deserves to be told. Michael now has a home, reunited with the daughter he protected from afar. For years, the dog, Chance, still by his side, now sleeps on a warm bed instead of concrete. The woman has not only her father's legacy restored, but also a chance to honor the man who made that possible. And Judge Judy's courtroom, it will be remembered not for judgment, but for the day it witnessed one of the most powerful acts of love and loyalty in American history. As viewers, the story leaves you with something deeper than drama. It leaves a reflection. Before judging, before assuming, take a moment to see the unseen battles people fight. Sometimes, the quietest acts of heroism are the most profound. Sometimes, a letter in trembling hands can change lives, hearts, and even a courtroom forever. And so, the story concludes, not with just relief, but with hope. Hope that humanity still exists in moments of despair. Hope that promises, even long delayed, can be fulfilled. Hope that courage, even when unseen, never goes unnoticed. If you feel inspired by Michael's journey, if it moved you as it moved thousands of others, share it with someone you care about. Let this story remind everyone that heroes walk among us, sometimes in silence, sometimes in struggle, but always deserving of recognition. Because, in the end, justice isn't only found in the law. It's found in hearts willing to believe, to forgive, and to honor the bravery that too often goes unseen.